Hi, I'm Carl Azus, and Fridays are awesome. First time I've said that on air this decade, and though I think it'd be hilarious to just end the show there, we've got a lot to tell you about this Friday on CNN 10, not to mention a school to shout out later, and it all starts with events taking place in the Middle East. Between Iran and the United States, military attacks and revenge attacks have dominated the headlines over the past couple weeks. But there's another event under investigation in Iran and abroad. A plane crashed in the Iranian capital of Tehran on Wednesday. It was a Ukrainian passenger jet headed from Iran to Ukraine, and it went down shortly after takeoff. All 176 people on board were killed. At first, Iranian and Ukrainian officials suggested that technical problems caused the crash. But yesterday, Ukrainian authorities said they were also considering terrorism and a missile strike as possible causes, and U.S. officials said it appeared Iran shot down the plane with 2 surface-to-air missiles. Why? Several sources, including U.S. President Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, say Iran could have done this by mistake. The plane crash happened within hours of Iran's missile attack against 2 military bases where U.S. troops were staying. If Iran thought a revenge attack was coming, it might have mistaken the Ukrainian passenger jet as a threat and shot it down. To be clear, that's just one theory that observers have. Formal investigations are taking place, and Iran denies shooting down the plane. It says the accusations are part of psychological warfare against Iran. Meanwhile, tensions remain high in the Middle East between that country and America, but historically speaking, that's nothing new.
There's little love lost between Iran and the United States.
Well, it is now Washington's move after Iran
Relations between the two countries have been troubled for more than half a century. But where did the conflict start? To understand that, we need to go back to the 1950s and this man, Mohammad Mossadegh. Mossadegh, who became prime minister in 1951, was key in nationalizing the country's British-controlled oil fields.
British experts were granted a concession to
As a result, the British enlisted the US to get rid of him. In 1953, the CIA and MI6 backed a coup ousting Mossadegh, restoring instead Iran's monarch, the Shah. But the Shah became unpopular at home for his lavish spending, ostentatious lifestyle, and the torture of dissidents. That all changed in 1979. The Islamic Revolution ushered in change, forcing the Shah to flee the country. The high-ranking Shia religious leader Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile in February to become Iran's supreme leader. Later that year, amid death to America chants, Iranian students stormed the US embassy in Tehran, taking 90 people hostage, including 66 Americans. Ultimately, all the hostages were released in a siege lasting 444 days. But the damage was done. The US designated Iran a state sponsor of terrorism 3 years later. In the 1980s, Iran and Iraq became embroiled in a war. The US was officially neutral, but in a bid to contain Iran, started backing Iraq and its leader Saddam Hussein. The move put the US and Iran even further at odds. The tension ratcheted up toward the end of the Iran-Iraq War. In 1988, the US shot down an Iranian passenger plane over Iranian territorial waters when it mistakenly identified it as a fighter jet. It killed all 290 people on board. When Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1990, the US and Iran suddenly shared Saddam Hussein as a common enemy. Although it did little to improve relations, US sanctions against Iran accelerated under the Clinton administration. In 2002, a year before the start of the Iraq War, President Bush included Iran in what he called the axis of evil.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil.
Due to concerns Tehran was trying to develop nuclear weapons to threaten the US.
10-second trivia. In what alpine nation would you find the village of Hallstatt, which is said to resemble Arendelle from Frozen? Italy, Austria, Norway, or Belgium? Only 2 of these countries are alpine, and only Austria is home to Hallstatt. It started with the work of writers and artists in the 1800s. They were struck by the snow-capped mountains and crystal waters that frame Hallstatt. It was added to UNESCO's World Heritage List in 1997. Instagram came along later, and people started sharing scenes of the village on social media. And then, after Frozen, well, let's put it this way. Hallstatt has a population of 780 people. In a given day, it's reportedly visited by as many as 10,000 people. This has created a blessing and a problem for the Austrian village. On one hand, tourism dollars have become a crucial part of Hallstatt's economy. On the other, it's been struggling with over-tourism, which has brought challenges for the small population and its privacy. Officials there are trying to implement a new bus system that will limit the number of buses and guests allowed in Hallstatt at any particular time. Other places in Europe are also trying to limit overcrowding caused by over-tourism. In Venice, Italy, new hotels are banned, and day trippers are being charged to get inside the city. In Amsterdam, Netherlands, there will be higher taxes for people who stay overnight and new limits on tours. Taxes are also going up for visitors to Barcelona, Spain, and efforts are underway there to encourage people to visit places outside of the city. And there's a new limit on the number of cruise ships allowed to dock in Dubrovnik, Croatia, as well as a limit on new restaurants. While all this is going on, part of the U.S. state of California is grappling with the question of whether the private ownership of a particular beach means the public is not allowed. If you have ever thought, what would a cuttlefish do if you glued 3D glasses on it and then played 3D movies of its favorite prey, you were thinking like researchers at the University of Minnesota. They used temporary glue and Velcro to study cuttlefish vision, and the animals went after the screen like critics go after popcorn. Researchers say cuttlefish have better depth perception than people do. The work was published in the journal Science Advances. Now you might be asking, what were they thinking? Of course fish have better depth perception. You don't need to dive deep into research to see that fish in water see better than fish out of water. As some might say, it's a new dimension of science that's making waves, but to others and the cuttlefish themselves, it's just seafood. I'm Carl Azus. This show goes out to Gull Lake High School in Richland, Michigan. Great hearing from you guys yesterday on our YouTube site. If you're watching from a school and you're jealous of Gull Lake, click this link to get to our official YouTube page. Subscribe and comment on the latest show, and your school, city, and state could be announced Monday on CNN 10. Have a great weekend, y'all.